We now need to introduce some technical economic terms. When we talked about that oikonomia is that festive table to which all people are invited, where everybody is included, then this is not a linear way of thinking about the economy. It is circular. Because when we want to express this approach into a practical guideline for policy, because policies need concrete measure points. It's all very well to have some interesting philosophical viewpoints, but in the end, one needs measure points or metrics to guide and monitor the policy. Like the statistics of GDP are a measure point. So the circle is production, that leads to consumption, that again leads to production, and so on. We produce what we need, and we need to consume in order to be able to produce. This is a very basic and general depiction of the circle. Someone may say, how about the people that cannot produce because they are too old, too sick, or too young? These are matters for further detailing. But now, painting with a very broad brush, we can say there is this cycle of production, consumption, again, production, and so on. And in between the two, there's also distribution. And there are different modes of distribution. The free market is just one methodology to achieve distribution. Other methodologies are sharing or redistributing, and there are still others. Which manner of distribution to apply in a particular case is an economic question. The basic question here is not ideology, but how do we take care of the livelihood of people in the best way? So it is not sound economy to exclude beforehand certain methods of distribution. One should keep all options open to be able to choose the most appropriate or efficient one. But coming back to the circle, how do we apply that circular thinking in our practical policies? We do that by including all people in that circle. Nobody should be allowed to drop out of it. So, that is the political mandate, the task that our policy should fulfill. To include the people in the circle or the cycle of the economy. And to specify this even more, what we should do is replace the present metric of the GDP, which is a linear dynamic of growth with no organic end, as we discussed in a previous video. Replace the entire indicator, that GDP metric, chuck it in the bin, so to speak, and replace it by the people quality or the P/Q indicator. Now, what is that? The P of people measures how many people fall off, drop out of that circle. So, in fact, it is a negative counting. The less, the better. So that's the P or people side of the indicator. Then the Q or quality side measures and monitors the quality of that participation. People may be included or participate in the cycle, but the quality of that participation may be below standards. They may have to work under very harsh circumstances. The hours may be too long. The place where they work may not be safe, etc. So we look at people and we look at quality when we monitor our economy. So you see, that's a completely different program than this growth of abstract numbers. In this talk, I only touch on this very briefly. It needs more explanation. You can read more about this other indicator in my book, Part 2, Chapter 3, the measure of good economy, money or people. In fact, this is the very essence, the core of my message, of my view on oikonomia. I can understand that most people, or many people, may not be able to completely grasp all the details of this very different economic story. But if we can just bring it down to this point, hey, we want the people/quality indicator, and we do not want the GDP indicator anymore, then that will do the job. You don't have to completely grasp every little detail of why this is so.